Okay, to open up our database, there's a couple ways we could do it. We could go into LibreOffice here, and then when it brings up the screen, we could just tell it to go into the one of the files we've recently used, or we can go out to our Documents folder and double click on the database we want to open, and that's the way I'll do it this time. Okay, here's my database, and what we're going to do today is add some fields and then change the form to be able to use those fields and then run some queries, just like we did in class the other day. So to do that, we start off by clicking on Tables, and then right-click on Household, and then Edit. And I've already added my fields to this one, so take a look at what they are, and then you can add to yours of the fields that we had in the list. These are the ones I did last time: household ID and last name. Then I have home phone, house number, P.O. box number, street, city, state, country, and zip that are all text varchars. Then memo is a memo long varchar. Send card is a yes/no boolean, and card reason is a text varchar. So take a few minutes and add those fields into yours. After you do that, click the save icon and X out of the household table. Then do the same thing with the person table. Right click on it, say edit, and add these fields. We already had person ID, household ID, first name, last name. Add date of birth, which is a date field. Send card, which is a yes/no boolean. Birth month is a small integer because it only goes from 1 to 12. It's never going to be bigger than 12, so small integer is plenty big enough for it. And then cell phone, email, work phone, and gender are all text varchars. Again, click the save icon and then X out of it. Once you've got those in place, we can create a form to use that the new layout. Notice the old form doesn't have those fields in it, the new fields. And so the old form at this point isn't much use to us. If we wanted for some reason to keep this form around, we could if we wanted to just put these items in. My opinion, this form is now useless. I don't really want it anymore, so I'm going to delete it. If you want to keep yours, you can. Just when you make a new one, give it a different name than this one. It says, are you sure you want to delete the selected data? The data is not the data we typed in here. The data is the form. So yes, I do want to delete that. And now I am going to make a new form, and I will use the wizard to create that form. The table I'm going to use is household, and it lists my available fields. I'm going to move them all over into the fields in the form, and then I'm going to move the household ID back because I don't want that one in there. And then hit next, which will let me set up the subform. So click add subform, then subform based on existing relation, then person, then next. Now it wants to know what fields from the subform I want to use. Again, I'm going to move them all over, then put person ID back and household ID back, and keep everything else. And say next. Now it wants me to arrange the controls. When we only had a few fields, we used this arrangement. With this many fields, that's not going to fit well on our screen. So I'm going to leave the default that it had picked, which I think will work a lot better for us this time. Then for set data entry, I'm again going to use the default. In other words, what it chose. The form is to display all data. Next. Apply styles. You pick whatever you like there. It's just the style that you prefer. And set the name. Because I got rid of my old household form, I'm going to keep this as, or use this as the new household form. I just call it household. And what do I want to do when I'm done? Work with the form. So I will leave the default there and finish. Now, here's my form with two different tables in my form. Notice when the Smith record is clicked in the household table, we see people from the Smith household that are in the person table. When I click the Jones record, now I see the people that I have in the Jones family. I'm going to fill in a few things here. Well, I've got birth month filled in. I want to use that in my queries. I've got send card filled in. As far as my queries go, I'm probably not going to be using these, so for my purposes in the class, I'm not going to put these in. For your purposes, since you're creating a database you're actually going to use with real people, you ought to populate these fields. If there's something you don't know or for some reason don't want to put in for a particular person, you don't have to. Okay, Smith and Jones, I both have that they're not getting a card, so I'm going to give one of them a card. I'll give the Smith family a card. Okay. Now I'm going to X out of here, and it tells me I changed the data in the form, and I was wondering if it would, because I didn't tell it to save it. I didn't hit the enter key, so I was just testing it to see what it would do. And yes, I do want to save that content. Now what we want to do is get some data out of our database. So we'll make some queries, and we can create queries in design view. If you want to try the wizard, go ahead. I didn't find it very useful, and other people haven't found the wizard terribly useful. Design view is pretty easy. Plus you get to translate it into SQL and look at how the SQL comes out. You can also create the query just in SQL view once you really get to know how to use SQL. SQL, by the way, stands for Structured Query Language. Okay, I'm going to add the household table, and I'm going to add the person table, and then close that. Now I need to pick the fields that I want to show up in my query. I don't have to pick them all. For example, if I'm going to use the results of this query to create mailing labels, all I want to see is name, address, and zip code, and I would not use the other fields. So let's pick out some fields here that we can query on. We'll pick last name. And note that's household.lastname, which is potentially different from person.lastname. So why don't we put person.lastname next, just so that we can compare the two. We'll have the two right next to each other. And a few things that we can query on. We'll put household send card. Person first name. Person last name we already have. Person date of birth. Person birth month, that's the one we want to query on. Now notice I put birth month there, which is here, and I'm going to put send card next. You don't have to put these things in the order that they show up in this menu. You put them in whatever order you like. Okay, so I'll use those fields to work with. Without giving it any criteria to select on, it'll just select everybody. And so we'll run a query. We do that by clicking this little icon here, and we can see it's selected everybody that I have in my database.